A male officer locked her out of the armory before her shift. The general unlocked it himself. The steel door had never felt so heavy. Private Elena Reyes stood before the armory, her palm resting against cold metal, watching Captain Davis turn the key that shut her out of the one place she had earned the right to enter. Behind him, the 4 stars on an older man's collar caught the hallway light, and neither of them yet knew how much those stars were about to matter. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing who's listening. It was 5:40 in the morning, and the base was still half asleep. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, throwing pale light across the linoleum floor. Elena had arrived early, the way she always did, boots laced tight, hair pulled back, ready for a shift she had trained 11 months to earn. She was the only soldier from her company certified for weapons inventory that week. She knew the codes. She knew the checklist. She knew, better than almost anyone in that hallway, what belonged behind that door. But Captain Davis had other plans. He stepped in front of her without a word of explanation, his jaw tight, his eyes flicking toward the sign that read "Authorized Personnel" only as though it were a shield he could hide behind. "Not today," he said. "New protocol. You'll sit this one out." His hand pressed flat against the door, blocking her the way a man blocks a doorway he has no real right to guard. Elena felt her stomach drop. She had heard whispers before, comments about her transfer, about how a woman hadn't paid her dues, about how certain names got remembered and others got erased. She had told herself those whispers didn't matter. Standing there now, locked out of her own post, she wasn't so sure anymore. She thought about arguing. She thought about walking away instead, swallowing it like she had swallowed so much already. Her throat tightened. Her hands, usually steady enough to field strip a rifle blind, trembled at her sides. She thought she'd never have anyone stand up for her in that hallway. She was wrong. Footsteps echoed from the far end of the corridor, slow, deliberate, unmistakably senior. Every soldier within earshot straightened instinctively, the way a body remembers respect before the mind catches up. General Walker rounded the corner, his white hair catching the light, his 4 stars announcing him before his voice ever did. Davis turned, and for one suspended second, the air in the hallway seemed to still completely. Even the ceiling lights seemed to hum quieter. "Captain," the general said, his voice calm but carrying the particular weight of a man who has spent 40 years learning exactly how much weight his voice needs. "Explain." Davis straightened, his jaw working. "Sir, there's a new access protocol I was implementing." "There isn't," General Walker said simply. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "I signed off on every access protocol on this base personally. Private Reyes's clearance was renewed 3 weeks ago. I remember, because I approved it myself." A murmur rippled down the hallway. A few soldiers near the vending machines had stopped pretending not to watch. Somewhere behind Elena, someone whispered her name, and for the first time that morning, it didn't sound like a rumor. It sounded like a fact reclaiming itself. Davis's mouth opened, then closed. Whatever protocol he had invented in the space of a single tense breath, it was dissolving in front of him, and everyone in that hallway could see it happen. This was the moment the audience needed. Not the door, not the key, but the question underneath it. Was Davis simply overzealous, following instinct instead of orders? Or was this something older, something Elena had felt brewing for months, but never had the proof to name? The uncomfortable truth is that both could be true at once. A small man clinging to a small authority, dressed up as procedure. It wasn't loud enough to be called cruelty, but it wasn't nothing either. And in rooms like this one, that gray space is where the real damage often happens. General Walker didn't raise his voice again. He didn't need theatrics. He reached into his own pocket, produced his master key, and stepped past Davis entirely, as though the captain were no longer standing there. The key turned. The lock released with a sound like a held breath finally let go. The heavy door swung open, and morning light from the high windows spilled across the racked weapons inside. Dust drifting lazily through the beam like something almost holy. "Private Reyes," the general said, stepping aside and gesturing toward the open doorway, "your post is waiting." Elena walked through the door on legs that didn't quite feel like her own. Behind her, she heard nothing from Davis. Not an apology, not an excuse. Just silence, the kind that follows a man who has been quietly, publicly, and permanently put in his place. Someone near the vending machine started clapping, uncertain at first, and then the sound spread, soft but unmistakable, filling the hallway the way morning fills a room that has been dark too long. General Walker didn't stay for applause. He simply nodded once at Elena, the way one soldier acknowledges another, and walked on down the corridor as if nothing unusual had happened at all, because to him, doing right by the people under his command was never unusual. It was simply the job, because kindness doesn't vanish. It waits, and it finds its way back, sometimes wearing 4 silver stars and carrying its own key. And somewhere in that quiet armory, in the dust-catching morning light, a young soldier finally exhaled the breath she hadn't known she was holding. If this story moved you, tell us where you're watching from and hit subscribe, because every week, we bring you true-to-life stories of courage, justice, and the quiet moments where someone finally does the right thing. You won't want to miss the next one.